What's up, I'm Aidan. We're here at my self-build. I've had quite a few questions about the capabilities of my Erbauer HVLP electric spray gun. Specifically, can I spray walls with it? Can I spray doors? Can I spray woodwork? I haven't really been able to answer that because I've used it for different projects, some of which are spraying a Sikagard universal wood treatment on my cart lodge. I've used some dark brown creosote. That was for my cart lodge also. I've used it previously, a light brown creosote or creocoat on a log cabin that I built for someone, and I've also used it for a little bit of restoration work, if you like, when I reinstated the steel trusses into my self-build slash barn conversion slash new build. For that, I used a red oxide metal primer. This is oil based, and I thinned that down with these thinners here. This is economy thinner gun wash, allegedly. So I probably found that off eBay. I'll put a link down below if you're interested. This red oxide metal primer, no nonsense, from Screwfix. It came out pretty well. At the time, I'd misplaced my viscosity cup, and I kind of guessed how much I needed to thin it down. It came out pretty decently, and I was quite happy with it. Now for the top coat, I used a Zinsser all coat exterior satin, black satin finish. This is multi-surface application. It's water based. It didn't really do that great, to be honest with you. It was okay. I couldn't speak for the finish because it didn't really matter, but this kind of gummed up the end of the gun quite a lot, and I had to keep on like picking bits out, so it done all right. So for this test, we've got some pine board, I believe it is. This is going to be a fair test for, say, your doors, your architrave, your skirting, anything that's wood based. I would imagine you'll probably get a similar kind of finish on MDF as well. A lot of people have asked me about emulsion. I've seen someone spray walls with emulsion with a similar kind of gun, and it's probably not worth it. I would say you'll get a much better coverage and it'll be quicker to do a roller. So we're going to give this a crack. We're going to go for 2 coats of my primer. Now this primer is Zinsser again. It's actually stain cover. This is oil based, so to thin this down, we're going to use the thinners again, and I found my viscosity cup, so we're going to get that correct. We'll probably do a couple of coats of that, and then we'll probably sand in between with a 240 grit, and then over the top we've got the Leyland Trade hard wearing acrylic eggshell. So this is for wall ceilings and wood. It's easy clean, stain and moisture resistant. It's for kitchens, bathrooms, busy areas, anything like that. So this is just a paint that I've got. I don't know how, I can't speak for any other paint that you might get. I'm gonna say that because this is water based, I might get a similar experience to what I'd done before when I sprayed my trusses. So I'm thinking that probably the primer is going to go pretty well, and then this might gunk up a little bit, but maybe because I've got the viscosity cup now, we might get a better result. This is filmed in 4K, so we should be able to get a good close-up, but I'll do my best to describe exactly what the situation is and what I feel and how it looks to me. Okay, so first of all, we're going to mix up our primer. Obviously this has not been opened for a while, so I'm going to mix it up in the tin first. Then we'll pour some into this cup, and we'll then thin it down and do the viscosity test. The viscosity test is basically to see how fluid it is, so whether it's thick or thin, because it needs to be quite thin to get through this gun. I know straight away it's not going to be thin enough, so I'm going to put some of this in. So that requires quite some mixing. Now the viscosity cup, you fill it up to the top, I believe, and if it drains out in 50 seconds or less, then your viscosity is correct. Obviously, if it's still too thick, it's going to take longer. This is probably mixed up to the consistency of maybe single cream. So I'm going to set my timer and we'll start pouring straight into it. We'll see how successful we are. Okay. Okay, so that was about 40 seconds. So I reckon we could probably go with that. It's quite noisy. Make sure you got your ear defenders. This you might not be able to get hold of. So there is a Sealey one, exactly the same model. It is more expensive, unfortunately, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Any HVLP gun of this kind of spec, 700 watt, I would imagine you're going to get similar results. Whilst I protect my ears, I'm not going to wear a mask or goggles because I'm doing such a small area and it's not really going to make much of a difference. I'm outside as well. We'll do this quick coat. I'm going to leave the stuff in the gun and then I'll clean up the rest of my gear. 2 hours it takes to dry, allegedly. We'll probably give it an hour. We'll come back. We'll do another coat if it's dry enough, or maybe if I can't sand it. We'll see what happens. It's going to be filmed over a couple of days. Okay, quick review. Maybe I should have wiped this down a little bit better, but that's the kind of thickness that I've laid it on. There's quite a lot of spatter around this, quite a lot of overspray. I've got it on the containers. It's at the horizontal fan. It might be better if you dial it in so it's a circular, but that's what's happened. We'll leave that to dry for a while and then we'll come back and see how it goes. And just because we're going to leave the gun, there's white paint there, I've just dipped this in thinners and we're just going to clean it up quickly. We're back. It's probably about 2 hours actually, and the sun's just setting, so I'm going to quickly sand this down and then we'll give it its last coat of this one. The wood's a bit hairy. Maybe I should have sanded it down beforehand. This is 240 grit. I could probably do with drying a bit more. Okay, this time we're going to go for a more of a controlled jet, so we're going to put this diagonal, allegedly, and then it will give us a round jet. Okay, can you see that? That's a little bit orange peely on that side. I almost wanted to lay a bit of a thicker coat. It's nicer down here. So yeah, I was tempted to either more paint so it'll almost run, or I just want to get a foam roller on that now, but I'm going to leave it. So that's what it looks like. But remember, this is oil based, so you know, I don't know whether you've painted before, like wood or anything, but when you're using oil based, it grabs better and it doesn't necessarily run. I don't think I could have put a thicker coat on as that in the water based. But yeah, we'll see how it is tomorrow. Next day, let's have a look at what it looks like. Okay, I have no idea how much this is going to show up, but there is a slight orange peel effect. I'd say it's probably smoothed itself out, you know, like when you paint oil based and then you see your brush strokes and then they kind of smooth themselves out. Obviously you can still see the grain quite a lot anyway, but yeah, we'll knock it back a bit with a bit of sandpaper, and then we're going to try out the other paint. That doesn't really make much of a difference. Maybe a little bit of the orange peel taken out, but it almost visually looks a bit more textured. Yeah, we'll thin down the other paint. So the Leyland acrylic paint is considerably more viscous. So I'm going to say this is probably going to be watered down quite a lot, maybe even 50-50. That was only 20 seconds. Oh, Christ. Okay, we got it about 40 seconds. So same as the other paint that I used. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the direction or the jet setting, or the fan setting, because I believe when I done it to the spot setting, obviously that's directing all of the paint right into the middle. So I don't think, how would you describe it? It atomizes as well. So we're going to go for the horizontal fan again. I have no idea what size tip this is or anything like that, but it's just, it just is what it is. Obviously with more advanced guns you get different tips that you can put on, but we'll see how this one goes. Before I spray this, I'm quickly going to have a go at this just so you can see how the spatter goes, and then you get a better understanding. Okay, fresh spray. It's got a couple of little bubbles in. I'm not going to touch it because we're just seeing how this sprays. But again, I almost just want to get a foam roller over it. So maybe that would be an idea. You just get your coverage on with your spray gun and then quickly roller it, like back rolling if you had an airless sprayer for emulsion. This one's recoat in 3 to 4 hours, so we're going to do another coat tomorrow. I'm going to clean the end of my gun again, just where obviously the tip is, and we're going to leave the paint in. We'll see how that turns out. I'll see you tomorrow. Next day. This is turning into a bit of a nightmare because I'm filming 3 different things at the moment. I need to make sure I swap to 4K in this one. I left it out last night and then it started raining, so it got a little bit wet, and then a moth decided to crawl in it as well. I'll quickly show you. Okay, that's where the moth is. I don't know whether it kind of evened it out. I mean, that undercoat you can still see underneath where I haven't sanded it properly, but we'll quickly sand it and then we'll give it another coat. Oh, and I also bottled it with a gun, so I tipped out the actual paint out of the bottom and then put a load of water in, sprayed it through to clean the nozzle basically, and then I put put the paint back in this. So it's ready to go. Didn't turn my mic on, did I? Right, let's spray. Go. Okay, I tried to put a little bit of a thicker coat on that time to get rid of the orange peel effect, so it kind of like run into itself without getting individual runs, but I put on too much paint, so you can see it's just running off the bottom there. There's a big lip down here, so I'd say that's probably not the way to do it, and just go for the thinner coat, accept the orange peel effect. You know, when you put on thicker paint, it kind of settles into itself. It works well with oil-based paint because it's a bit more sticky, but with the water-based paint, you can't really do it. So I'm convinced it's just a roller. Again, we've got a couple of little bubbles in this as well. So I'll let that dry, quickly wash out my gun again, and then we'll see what the situation is tomorrow. We'll give it a light sand and then we'll go again. We're back. It's been a couple of weeks, I'm sorry. I'm just going to do one final test. I'm going to quickly try and show you what the finish is like on here. I've sorted out my settings. Still filming in 4K, but it knocked out my focus before, so I've corrected that now. Right, let's shine a light on this and you see if you can see what I can see. I've got a little foam roller now, so we're just going to spray that again, probably overload it a little bit and then give it a quick roll and see what happens. I've actually left the paint in the gun. It's been in there for 2 weeks. Obviously it's so watered down that it hasn't really done anything, and I just realised that it's best to pull the trigger back when you scrape out the end. I've stopped just before it starts running. You can see tiny air bubbles in that, but it seems that they get let off. It's almost run into itself again. It's still a little bit mottled and orange peely up on this corner. I don't know whether you can make that out. Let's get a roller on it and see what happens. It's probably not a fair test because obviously there's no paint on this roller. There's a bit of dust on it though. Right, let's just see what happens. Right, there's major bubbleage. Major bubbleage. Jesus Christ. That does not work. I'll let that dry, but that's just a bad idea. Just don't do that ever. Let's go for a conclusion. Is it possible to paint your interior with this kind of gun? 700w HVLP. Obviously, I believe it's single stage. Kind of, yeah. You'd probably get away with it. It depends on how much a perfectionist you are, because when you think about it, I think everyone's probably got used to brush strokes in their woodwork, like interior wise. I don't think they're visually used to like the mottled orangey peel kind of look. even though it's kind of like an equivalent. I would say it's just literally, if this was a 3-stage HVLP or even 4 or 5, it would atomize the paint a lot better. It would be more of a haze instead of a spatter on the actual wood, and then you would get a better finish. I won't be using it for my interior woodwork because I like a better finish than that. I also like using oil paints when I use a brush, because it lays into itself a lot better, and it kind of like, it just smooths out any brush strokes anyway. So that's kind of like, obviously make of it what you will. If I was painting like an outdoor shed or something like in an actual colour, yeah, I'd go for it because it doesn't really matter. But internally, personally, I wouldn't. But go for it if you want. Right, I just looked up the nozzle size on this gun. It's 2.5mm, which is quite large for a gun basically. Even though you have to thin the paint down so much, the nozzle has to be quite big. That tells me that the gun is basically really low on power, because normally you would get a bigger, say up to 2mm, to spray thicker stuff through professional guns. So that tells you a bit about this. I'm going to leave it there. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, hit the bell notification. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.